The media is filled with news about the KHA members stepping down to take responsibility. The remaining members are now in a meeting discussing the continuous resignation of their members and how it was supposed to end with only a fine if it was before. The old men are agitated by the current situation of how the media is after them. Some of them speak of how people are demanding that everyone in the KHA be investigated and how it seems that a special team will be created for the inspection. Let me double check and make sure Donald Trump isn't the author of this comic. Hearing this, another old man shouts for him to stop his nonsense or else he'll be publicly shamed. The chairman of the KHA, Jin-hyo Kwon, remains quiet, though he is also distressed. He worries that the fingers will soon point at him and get dragged into that mess. Jin-hyo mulls over how Taewon gave Yoojin's spare house key to its owner. He believed the S-ranker to be an obedient dog. However, Taewon's recent actions prove that Jin-hyo can trust no one. He can only curse in his head while the others are still talking about the main issue. Oh, my neck. This guy deserves to be given the highest punishment possible. Suddenly, the door to the conference room opens. Sukwon Choi appears before them while pulling another man into the room. Clearly irritated, he shouts at their incompetence. The old men are surprised to find him there, speaking of how the MKC Guildmaster was supposed to be staying low. They also notice how he is dragging the Dungeon Management Office's chief director. Sukwon roughly throws the other man to the podium and tells them that no matter the corruption, once the danger is before the people, they will undoubtedly focus on that matter instead. He then asks the director to confirm this as the other man stands with a worried look. The director of the Dungeon Management Department finally speaks before everyone. He reveals the existence of an illegal A-rank dungeon that the KHA is co-managing with the MKC Guild. He explains how the raid kept being pushed off because of what happened and stutters the possibility of a dungeon break. This revelation puts a smile on some old men's faces as they discuss the effectiveness of this possibility. They're really a bunch of old, rotten men. I wouldn't be surprised if they were on Epstein's client list. The chairman suddenly happily exclaims at the existence of such a disaster. Seeing this reaction, Sukwon tells him to wipe that smile off if he wants to be seen as genuine in his concern. Hearing this, Jin-hyo quickly covers his mouth. Sukwon then points at the group of old men, confidently convicting them of pushing the raid off just for that kind of situation. He demands them to stop the pretense and be thankful that he's doing something like that for them. With a menacing aura, he reveals the necessity of their power to keep himself alive. Aha! It's no surprise that you're doing all this for selfish reasons. In a different location, a small dark dragon cries out as Blue happily shakes the branch in which Chirpy's nest is. Yoojin sees this and reminds them not to steal each other's food while Peace trails behind him. Upon his return, Yoojin has focused his attention on the magic beasts. Considering the current situation, he finds it uncomfortable to go outside. Yoojin pours food for the shadow unicorns, salt and pepper, and tells them to eat up. With how things are going for the KHA, Manhwa is busy with his item workshop, where he teaches the Heian Guild's equipment management team. Dr. Heian Seok and her team are currently doing everything they can to learn more about gates at the research center that they've set up. Hamandu, the information dealer, has been recruited and has also taken residence in a corner of the monster training facility. It has set up a shop where stray hamsters can be adopted. Yoojin is initially surprised and asks where the other is getting money for that. Haman admits that it doesn't make money, hence he has a private investigator side job. Since he doesn't have to pay rent, he can now do what he wants. Must be nice, because Lord knows making these videos aren't paying the bills. Yoojin can only smile, thinking that either way this is still related to his breeding facility. Wow, I can't believe that looking for people is only his side job. At least he's happy with what he's doing. That's definitely a life goal there. In a way, Yoojin considers Hammond's recruitment a positive help for the research. With the research members looking dead, the sudden appearance of a cute hamster gives them life. It is to the point that it even ignited their fighting spirit in researching since they're motivated by their hamsters. Seeing this, Yoojin cannot help but think that the research team's area has also become a hamster facility. In addition to them, Yara recently became officially recognized as an S-ranker. After the incident in Hong Kong, she finally began raiding S-rank dungeons after Yoojin recognized her growth and qualifications. Before starting her first S-rank raid, Yoojin asks if Yerim is sure about this. Yerim stands between Peace and Yuhyun as she proudly announces that she's sure since even her guildmaster said so. She confidently flaunts how she destroyed Yuhyun back in Hong Kong. Still, Yuhyun reminds her that it was a 3 versus 1 battle. Yerim hears this and complains that she made all the attacks and that her guild master only got his attack power boosted because of his brother. Yuhyun rebuts by listing how Yerim got an elemental buff, borrowed stats, environment advantage, flame-resistant coat, and even the support of the Sejong guild master. Yerim bickers back, claiming she's only been in that hunter business for 2 months. This speaks volumes for her compared to her guild master's 3 years of experience. Already used to their bickering, Yoojin pointedly ignores them and pets Peace instead. Peace purrs his focus on Yoojin alone. Seeing the two still arguing, Yoojin tells them to behave in the dungeon and reminds them of how much he loves them. He then emphasizes the importance of safety. Real smooth, big bro. You cunningly applied the keyword to boost their growth. The three happily accept Yoojin's affection, and soon they bid their goodbyes and remind Yoojin to stay home and safe. Yoojin waves as they go and says he's not going anywhere with the media's attention on him. With them gone, Yoojin looks at the distance, thinking how his guests should be there soon. After some time, the door to Yoojin's place opens and the guest hopes he isn't too early. Yoojin greets Taewon and says he's just on time. Taewon hands him 2 boxes of chicken and speaks of the messy business in KHA, so he opts to get off work early. Since their first get-together, Yoojin and Taewon's relationship has gotten better, and Yoojin is surprised at how really nice Taewon is. Upon learning more about him, Yoojin now considers Taewon to be the most normal among the S-rankers he knows. However, once the topic flows to how Yoojin urges Taewon to take the helm of responsibility, the S-ranker will refuse, claiming that his doing so will only create more mayhem. It is akin to how a bear stays cooped up in a mountain cave despite a considerable fire, thinking he's a monster that shouldn't be released to the world. This ends up infuriating Yoojin, seeing that the S-ranker never gives in. From his refusal, Yoojin easily determines that Taewon is unrelated to the filial piety addicts. Giving it another shot, Yoojin makes up a different scenario where the world will end if Taewon doesn't take the role of a leader. Taewon thinks it over and bows his head, claiming that the results will still be the same. He believes that his becoming a leader means their downfall. Wow, he's stubborn. It's like he has this convenient answer just to reject such a position. This response dramatically frustrates Yoojin, who can't help but make a mess of his hair. He suddenly chugs his drink straight as he makes plans in his head on how he can make Taewon give in. Seeing Yoojin drink, Taewon curiously watches. Yoojin recalls how they almost died when he tried the keyword on Noah, so he is now more cautious. Considering what Taewon did the first time they met, it might become another disaster. Yoojin mulls how the S-ranker might not cooperate even if Yoojin honestly tells him everything. Thinking this, he decides to hang out with Taewon normally and simply become closer to the KHA official. I hope your plan works, big bro. Having decided, Yoojin urges Taewon to learn more about each other while pouring him a drink. Though a bit confused, Taewon agrees. The two had spent days similar to this. Yoojin laughs out loud while Taewon confirms his story of how someone lectured the seasoned guildmaster for not respecting his elders, thinking that Hyunjae is younger than Taewon. Yoojin cannot hold back his laughter as he admits that Hyunjae looks young. Crying tears of laughter, Yoojin wonders out loud if Hyunjae wears clothes like that so he wouldn't look younger, even if he's in a dungeon raid. Wiping his tears, Yoojin comments on how the Sejong Guildmaster talks like a 40-year-old man. Taewon smiles, saying that Hyunjae only did that recently. This fact surprises Yoojin, asking for confirmation. Taewon says it oddly suits the Sejong Guildmaster and mentions that it has only been 2 months since that change happened. Thinking of it, Taewon says it's around the time when Yoojin had his awakening. Yoojin claims that Hyunjae must have simply changed his concept. Yoojin suddenly stops, realizing that it was around the time he regressed. Taewon talks about how Hyuna really found it amusing. At the same time, Yoojin thinks about how Hyunjae developed his habit of talking like an old man since the time turned back by 5 years. Yep, this is all your fault, MC. Filled with such thoughts, he recalls what Newbie said about how someone really sensitive might recognize the difference. Yoojin ponders if Hyunjae felt out of place on himself, who is 5 years younger. He thinks this must be why the Sejong Guildmaster subconsciously dresses and talks that way. Yoojin ponders that if Hyunjae did recognize the difference, if he somehow recalls memories before regression and learns about him then. His thoughts suddenly stop when an alarm goes off on a mobile phone. An emergency text is on the screen announcing an A-rank dungeon break in the Gangseo View area. Though they are surprised by this, Taewon calmly announces that he should go now, considering the other S-rankers are currently in dungeon raids. Yoojin comments on the perfect timing, saying it conveniently appears when most of the S-rankers are gone, right when the S-rankers capable of AoE attacks are gone. Taewon is surprised by Yoojin's suspicions. Yoojin does hope that it's only a coincidence. However, he still questions the identity of the person benefiting the most from this incident. Right, we all know that it's none other than the KHA chairman. With such thoughts, Yoojin says they should go together since it'll be faster to get there with Noah. Wearing a jacket, Yoojin says that if this incident is deliberate, then the responsible party will prefer achieving maximum damage. With this in mind, he decides to help Taewon prevent it. In the scene in the dungeon break in Gangseo View, Seoul, people are crying in fear for their lives and screaming for help. An A-ranker valiantly fights against the monsters to help civilians get to safety. However, before they can get the rubble off, the hunter gets stabbed in the back by the monster bee. Seeing this scene of easy defeat terrified the civilians. They cover themselves and shout in fear for someone to save them. As a monster is about to attack them, Taewon appears and punches it out of existence. That timing and single punch. Taewon is like Saitama in this scene. Taewon helps the people by removing rubble and guiding them on what to do. Suddenly, a swarm of flying monsters appear. Riding No's dragon form, Yoojin shouts that they'll block those. The survivors are surprised at their appearance, and they feel better about the dragon's appearance with Hunter Yoojin Han. Yoojin good-naturedly reminds them to get to his shelter. Yoojin then looks down at Taewon, remembering his lack of flight skills. He offers to share his skill with Taewon and connect him with No. However, Taewon rejects the offer, claiming that that kind of height is nothing. At that, the S-ranker suddenly jumps from where he is onto a building's surface and then leaps to where the monsters are. Taewon easily defeats the monsters with one hit from his fist. Right, let's not forget that he's capable of controlling his weight. Seeing Taewon's prowess, Yoojin can't help but be amazed. As he watches Taewon fight, he knows that the S-ranker doesn't have a wide range of skills. However, the way Taewon moves resembles that of a durable machine. Noah suddenly speaks, surprised at the existence of a dungeon filled with bees. Yoojin confirms this, saying his thoughts on how it might be a secretly managed illegal dungeon. He adds that unregistered dungeons exist because some want to monopolize their profits. Yoojin then speaks of the dungeon's source honey in the hunter market, saying that if they dig into it, they might find a clue about the identity behind the current incident. Suddenly, a swarm of monster bees attacks them, making Yoojin fall from Noah. Yoojin shouts, and Noah quickly grabs Yoojin to catch him with his dragon hands. Noah flies away from the swarm while holding Yoojin. He shouts how the monsters are chasing them and mentions that this only means they're not attacking the civilians. Noah defends against the monster bees by smacking them with his dragon tail. However, the monsters continue to chase only after them, making him question why they're doing that. Oh, it's probably because of what Big Bro put himself. Right. Noah continues to evade the monsters by flying, but his movements make Yoojin uncomfortable. Noah notices this and asks if Yoojin is okay. He then mentions using his poison to get rid of the monster bees. Still, Yoojin rejects this idea since they are near the residential area, which will only cause further damage. Though dizzy, Yoojin tries to devise a plan and notices something behind them. He directs Noah's attention back to the gate. Using his promising sprout skill, Yoojin identifies the giant monster coming out of it as the A-rank red sphinx bee with queen class. Its skills are A-rank venomous sting and S-rank colony's trust. Yoojin exclaims at the queen's appearance, and the monster screeches loudly. At its screech, the eyes of all the monster bees in the area flash red and quickly gather at where Noah and Yoojin are. Yoojin shouts that this is a boss skill that strengthens the swarm. He claims that defeating the queen will take down the entire colony. Seeing the monsters surround Noah and Yoojin, Taewon immediately runs in their direction, thinking that he can't reach that kind of height. Above him, Noah protects Yoojin with his entire body as the monster bees continue to gather around them. Seeing Taewon approach, Yoojin shouts at him to accept his skill. At that, Taewon doesn't reject Yoojin's stern mother Hendril Surgeon skill, and he immediately shares senses with Noah. Without wasting time, Taewon stops running while Noah flies low and approaches the other S-ranker. Recognizing Noah's movements, Taewon jumps up from where he is and drops at Noah's back with an exact timing. Beneath them, Yoojin covers his mouth, for he still suffers from flying all over while in Noah's hands. Poor MC, he's definitely an F-ranker. Looking at Yoojin, Taewon asks him. However, Yoojin is still feeling sick and simply shouts that Noah will provide Taewon the footing, so he'll have to deal with the monsters. Determined, Taewon says he'll try his best. The trio faces the numerous monsters surrounding them, creating a great boom. Yoojin is confident that with Taewon's prowess and Noah's flying ability, there will be a chance for them to end this fight. Taewon easily deals with the monster bees with his punches. Seeing an opportunity, he suddenly leaps from Noah's back to face the enormous monster. The red sphinx bee screeches and releases green fumes as it readily faces Taewon with its stinger. The beast shoots it directly at where Taewon is, sending its venomous stinger flying off. Seeing this, Yoojin shouts at Taewon, warning him that it's an A-rank venom. However, Taewon remains unfazed and punches at the venomous stinger, making it crumble into pieces. This display of power shocks Noah and Yoojin, while the red sphinx bee can only watch as the hunter heads her way. Taewon pulls back his hand as dark smoke-like energy envelops it. He holds the monster with one hand while readying his other fist, which is filled with dark energy. At that, he doesn't hold back his strength and punches the beast with all his might. The attack sends the red sphinx bee down to the ground with a huge blast. Once the smoke from the attack dissipates, the monster lays on the ground, trembling. At its death, the numerous monster bees suddenly fizzle and soon follow the red Sphinx bee to the ground. I gotta agree, that attack is like a serious punch. Taewon watches this happen with his fists still enveloped in dark energy. Yoojin and Noah get closer to the ground as Yoojin comments on how Taewon dealt that with one punch. As the two drop to the ground, Noah asks if Yoojin is okay. Yoojin confirms that he's only feeling dizzy. Taewon checks his phone and determines there's still time before the next wave of monsters. He announces that once the A rankers and above arrive, they'll have to enter the dungeon. Yoojin is still surprised by what happened, even though he knows it wouldn't be difficult for Taewon. He ponders if it is because of the dark energy, whether it is a poison resistance or skill nullification ability. Noah looks at Yoojin, asking his opinion as to why the monsters were after them. Yoojin smiles, saying he's wondering about that too. He makes a guess, saying that it might be because of Noah since he's flying and the monsters probably thought he was a friend. Aha, we're sure you already know the real reason for that. Noah laughs at this, claiming he doesn't need bees for friends. Suddenly, something leaps to where they are, catching them completely off guard. Something slashes at them, sending Noah flying into a wall. Noah groans at the impact and steadies himself to see what attacked him. A sharp-fanged monster appears before him with menacing red eyes. Underneath the monster is Yoojin, who is entirely trapped by the monster's clawed hand. Noah shouts in worry while Taewon runs to where Yoojin is, asking if the next wave is already starting. Yoojin glares at the monster holding him down, shouting that the beast doesn't seem to be from the gate. Noah asks if Yoojin is okay. MC confirms he's okay since he has a damage-canceling item. However, the sudden presence of the monster and the bees targeting them makes him think that it's all actually because of him. Wait, were you really unaware that you didn't think it was because of you? Lycanthrope is an S-rank monster with the nickname of the Wolf of Gluttony. Yoojin recalls that it's a monster that is supposed to be asleep in an unregistered dungeon, and it is only supposed to appear a year from now in his previous life. At the time it got out, there was minor damage despite its rank, because the monster only cares about mana stones. That was the case back then. At present, the monster rips Yoojin's shirt. Yoojin thinks of the mana stone created by combining an S-grade Dragonkin and a transcendent being's mana stone. Considering this, the Lycanthrope can't help but drool and lick at the F-ranker, Yoojin, who looks exasperated. Yoojin ponders if this is why the monster bees and the current monster are obsessed with them. Yep, the series is now changing its title into something more catchy. Noah once again asks if Yoojin is okay as the Lycanthrope continues to trap and drool at him. Yoojin confirms that he's really fine, saying he's thankful for Yumi's damage-canceling effect. Noah curses and uses his soundless scream skill to share twice the effect of the injury he received to the monster. This makes the Lycanthrope whimper in pain and fall to the ground. Noah calls out for Yoojin as he and Taewon immediately run towards them. Taewon instructs Noah to protect Yoojin while he takes care of the monster. Taewon punches the enemy directly. However, he stops short when he realizes that the Lycanthrope's skin has changed, making his attack useless. Unperturbed by the S-ranker's attack, the monster slashes at Taewon, who quickly leaps away to evade the attack. Though safe, Taewon's shirt is still torn by the attack. Taewon looks at his chest in surprise. Yoojin yells that it's the monster's ability. Using his promising Sprout skill, Yoojin determines that the enemy uses an SS-ranked defense skill called Obsidian Fur. He explains that most attacks won't work as long as the skill is active. At least it's not a passive skill. They'll be more troublesome if it is. Yoojin looks at the monster's stats, identifying it as a Tier 1 Lycanthrope, the Obsidian King, with a rank of S and a potential rank of S. It has 3 optimal initial unlock skills, which are the SS rank Obsidian Fur, S rank Claws of Laceration, and A rank Gigantification. Suddenly, the gate behind them shines bright red. Monsters start appearing from within, and Noah shouts about the incoming next wave of monsters. Seeing this, Yoojin directs Noah to take care of the gate and touches Taewon. Noah quickly agrees to this and heads off. Yoojin tells Taewon to take care of the Lycanthrope. He recalls the dark smoke-like energy that the S-ranker used before, asking if it is a nullification skill. Taewon confirms that it is, but he doubts it'll work against an SS-rank defense. Hearing this, Yoojin announces his intention to share a skill with Taewon that will double his skill's effects. Taewon tries to reject this, but Yoojin cuts him off, saying that it's not a situation that he can reject. The Lycanthrope suddenly leaps at them, and Yoojin touches Taewon's back, telling him to take his skill. At that moment, Taewon uses his nullification skill, enveloping dark energy in his fist. Yoojin quickly uses his skills. The S-rank veteran F-ranker and S-rank +1. In case you forgot again, the veteran F ranker is the skill that doubles the effect of an attack skill, while +1 enables our MC to share a skill of his as long as he maintains contact with the person he's sharing it with. Taewon throws an upper punch at the Lycanthrope, easily causing damage to the monster. The impact of his attack surprises Taewon himself. He can't believe that such force came from him. The Lycanthrope is sent off blasting into a building at Taewon's attack. Yoojin is glad that it worked well against an SS rank skill. He then instructs Taewon to grab onto him since his sharing skill only works if they keep touching. Yoojin is about to explain more, but Taewon already lifts and places Yoojin on his shoulders. Yoojin is surprised by Taewon's choice, but the S ranker merely announces that they should go. With that, Taewon jumps off to where the Lycanthrope dropped while dragging our poor MC on his shoulders. The monster growls as it lunges at them. Yoojin keeps a grip on Taewon while the other simply keeps a hand on his leg. While doing this, Taewon punches the Lycanthrope numerous times with his other fist. With that same hand, he grabs the monster's arm and envelopes his knee with the dark energy of his nullification skill. Taewon mauls how his pillager skill is typically small range, and using it this way is new for him. He then hits the monster with his knee, creating a significant impact that makes the Lycanthrope yelp in pain. However, Taewon is not yet done. He grabs the monster's head, making the monster sweat and worry. Taewon uses the monster's head to pull himself up, and Yoojin, who is still on his shoulders. Really, our poor MC. The S ranker is amazed at how he can fight with only one arm, and despite this, he doesn't find it cumbersome. Taewon actually feels much stronger than ever. I hope he doesn't go crazy like the previous S rankers who experienced MC's sharing skill. Taewon grabs the monster and twists his hold to jump down on it, delivering a kick full of weight and filled with his dark energy. At his attack, Taewon activates his skill, the Rusted Gray Scale, to increase his body mass. With that, he sends the monster to the ground with all his weight. The effect of the Pillager skill renders the Lycanthrope's SS rank defense skill useless, and a massive burst of explosion explodes at the impact. As the smoke and dust disperse, the monster lies lifeless beneath Taewon. It is to the point that the Lycanthrope's body is almost non-existent. Taewon looks down at it, thinking that the foe is definitely an S rank, yet he easily defeats it. A voice suddenly complains at how he got wolf all over him, making Taewon look back at its source. Yoojin wipes himself, saying that it is at least quick since he shared his skill with Taewon. Taewon continues to hold onto Yoojin's arm as the F ranker suggests going into the gate. He tells Taewon that he'll undo the sharing skill and can now let go. However, Taewon doesn't let go. Instead, the grip on Yoojin's arm tightens. He comments on how Yoojin was composed despite being in between the monster's jaws before. Taewon then questions if Yoojin has a skill that makes him incapable of feeling fear. Yoojin looks at him with confusion, but Taewon simply keeps on going. He mentions how Yoojin has some valuable skills, realizing that this is why the Sejong Guildmaster wants Yoojin so much. Taewon adds that he also suddenly developed a desire to hunt in that state. That line about Hyunjae wanting Yoojin is definitely feeding the Fujoshi's and Fudenshis watching. Yoojin looks back at Taewon, thinking that Taewon doesn't really mean hunting monsters per se. He suddenly recalls what happened back when he shared the same skill. After getting a taste of that skill, it ignited the desire to slay every other S ranker. With such thoughts, Yoojin panics a bit. He tells Taewon to let him go, claiming that the S ranker is joking. Taewon suddenly mentions Yoojin's chest injury and pulls out a potion bottle from his inventory. He pours it down on Yoojin to see if it will heal the chest injury, but nothing happens. Yoojin looks at his chest in panic and tries to come up with an explanation. Taewon simply points out that Yoojin has a damage-canceling item, so there's no way he got that injury today. The S ranker recalls that Yoojin also didn't have it back when Noah first visited, so he concludes that this was a recent injury. Looking at the scar on Yoojin's chest, Taewon notices the faint pulse of mana coming from it. He then claims that the monsters were after Yoojin, specifically his chest. Taewon asks if this has anything to do with that scar. He continues to hold Yoojin's arm, asking what exactly he has done. Taewon ponders how extraordinary the skills are for an F ranker. However, he thinks that it is not just skills. Taewon believes that Yoojin is hiding something. With a serious look, Taewon calls out to Yoojin, asking who he is exactly. Oh no, here we go again. With the existence of skills that can make a monstrously strong person even stronger, Taewon believes that he can't leave this person unchecked. Yoojin acts dumb, asking what T1 means. However, the S ranker is not letting it go and demands an answer. Taewon asks how he should perceive Yoojin. He ponders whether Yoojin is someone he must protect against the S rankers around him, or if the F ranker can manipulate the said S rankers, making him a threat to the KHA and an existence that must be eliminated. Taewon determines that he must make his choice. With his hand still on Yoojin's arm, Taewon uses his nullification skill. Yoojin is surprised at the burst of dark energy and asks what Taewon is doing. Taewon explains that his skill, Insidious Pillager, allows him to downgrade his target's certain skill rank. With a menacing look, Taewon announces that it usually takes a difference of 3 ranks. Yoojin is surprised by this announcement and a system notification appears, letting him know that the rank of fear resistance is decreasing. He suddenly realizes that he's sharing his skill with Taewon, meaning the skill rank will degrade twice of the 3 ranks. Instead of downgrading only to S rank, the skill downgrades further. Yoojin tries to make Taewon let go of him as he watches the rank of fear resistance drop to C rank. No, he didn't. These S rankers really need a lesson on how to properly treat an F ranker. At its sudden drop, Yoojin now finds it hard to breathe. He smells his surroundings and sees the remains of the monsters around them, but most of all the presence of the S ranker before him. The sight and proximity make Yoojin groan and drop to the ground. He trembles in fear at the sudden onslaught on his senses. Taewon looks down at Yoojin's crouching form, telling him it is only fitting for him to be afraid. He urges Yoojin to refuse the norm of getting dragged to dangerous places. Taewon tells him not to act as an item for those S-rank monsters, or else he promises to destroy Yoojin. Bro, please stop pushing your ideals on others. As Taewon warns him not to get involved with the S-rankers, Yoojin clenches his teeth in frustration. He musters his courage and looks up at Taewon, claiming that the other is being dishonest. Yoojin accuses Taewon of wanting to get rid of him because he finds Yoojin's skill irresistible. He tells Taewon to stop using the other S-rankers as his excuse because he knows that Taewon is shaken by his skill's influence. Though he is trembling, Yoojin reaches out a hand, thinking that he lived just fine for 5 years, even without the existence of an L-rank fear resistance. He grabs at Taewon's clothes, telling the other that whether he's afraid or not, he will still do what he must. Yoojin glares up at the S-ranker, claiming that if Taewon keeps on being obstinate with the way he lives, then he'll do his utmost to erase Taewon's influence. That way, the S-ranker will not hinder him anymore. Yoojin promises to tie Taewon to a menial job just to ensure that the other can't ask for help from anyone and simply live his boring life. Yoojin glares and grins at Taewon despite sweating in fear, claiming that Taewon will have to do whatever the higher-up says since he's a loyal civil servant. Considering that, Taewon won't be able to get involved with him. You better stop now, Taewon. Our MC can be really vindictive. Taewon stares down at Yoojin, commenting on how he's really difficult to deal with. Heard how stubborn Yoojin is, Taewon snatches Yoojin's bracelet off him. The S-ranker holds it up, saying that if Yoojin continues acting like that, he'll just get rid of the bracelet that grants him damage nullification. However, before Taewon can do anything with it, a peeping sound comes from the bracelet and the stone on it shines brightly. Suddenly, flames emerge from the bracelet, getting in between Taewon and Yoojin. The two are both surprised, especially when a voice speaks up, commenting on how Yoojin said he wasn't going outside. Yoojin recognizes the voice as the flames flicker and an image of Yoojin in flames flares before him. Yoojin asks what his big brother is doing there and faces Taewon as he gets into a protective stance. Lil bro looks like the Human Torch here. Still surprised, Yoojin asks what Yoojin is doing there, confused about how he can be there. Yoojin explains that he borrowed Iron's power and has been able to do this since the Hong Kong incident. He adds how he made Iron sleep next to Yoojin, so that the fire elemental can wake up whenever there's a reaction from Uni. At that moment, Uni is in her bird form and wraps itself on Yoojin's arm, reverting to its bracelet form. Yoojin looks back at Yoojin, telling his older brother that he can't stay there for long. Considering this, his big bro should contact the Sejong Guildmaster. Are you sure it'll be alright to bring Hyunjae into this mix, lil bro? Yoojin says that Hyunjae should currently be in a dungeon raid since he heard that all S-rankers are in one. Yoojin says it's a cover and the other must have sent Evelyn to the dungeon raid. He adds that the Sejong Guildmaster had just returned to Korea after dealing with the issue in Hong Kong. Yoojin then asks if Yoojin has his phone and tells him to call Hyunjae now, even though he doesn't know what exactly happened with Taewon. At that moment, Taewon crouches and his grip cracks the ground. Suddenly, he leaps from where he is, right towards them. Yoojin comments that Taewon looks determined to see the end. In that instant, the two S-rankers clash. Taewon gets closer and punches the flaming Yoojin, making the fire disappear where his fist with an active Insidious Pillager hits. Yoojin retaliates by simply blasting the other with his flames, throwing Taewon away from them and into the rubble. Though burning, Taewon quickly gets himself steady and charges once more. Yoojin protects his head from the thrashing happening around him. He thinks that it might be because of his downgraded fear resistance that he's unable to even watch the fight. With trembling hands, he calls Hyunjae, whose name is saved as skill in his phone. Yoojin thinks about not wanting another S-ranker there when Hyunjae suddenly answers the call. The Sishan Guildmaster is honored that Yoojin called him first. Still affected by fear, Yoojin properly calls Hyunjae by his name and asks him to go to the dungeon break site right now. Hyunjae asks if Taewon is not enough, thinking that one S-ranker is sufficient. Watching the destruction before him, Yoojin tells Hyunjae that Taewon is the problem. Still sweating, he tells Hyunjae to get there fast or his treasured item will break. Yoojin can't help thinking that bringing Hyunjae into the mix might add to the problem. That's what I'm saying. It'll end up creating more destruction. On another side of the area, Noah's busy dealing with the monsters from the gate. The dragon comments on how there's no end to them and really thinks that using his poison will make it easier. He looks back and notices the massive fire. Looking closely, he notices that the Heian Guildmaster is there. Seeing the two S-rankers fight, Noah circles, worrying if Taewon went rogue. Noah knows that he should get involved, but he's discouraged by his own weakness. Groaning, Noah spreads his wings and decides to distract them instead. At that, he roars out loud, making the white monster moles run off to where Yoojin is. Yoojin notices the sudden surge of monsters. Some of the monsters leap to where Yoojin is. However, those were easily defeated by the appearance of Yoojin and Taewon before him. Yoojin calls out Taewon on what he's doing. He questions why the other is protecting Yoojin now when he just took his bracelet earlier. Taewon simply replies that Yoojin is still an F-ranker who is weak against monsters. Taewon, you should get yourself checked. Your hypocrisy level is rising. Listening to them, Yoojin finally understands what's happening. He realizes that Taewon hasn't made up his mind on how he should perceive Yoojin, whether as someone who must be protected or as someone threatening who must be eliminated. While Taewon slays the monster moles, Yoojin mauls how appearing weak before Taewon is actually safer for him. Yoojin suddenly looks at the flames he's made of and groans upon realizing that his time is almost up. He tells his big bro to be careful and says he'll try returning as soon as possible. Holes appear on Yoojin as he starts to disappear. Seeing this, Yoojin assures his lil bro that it's fine, so he should just clear the dungeon. Now that he has an idea, Yoojin says he can handle the situation now. At that, lightning flashes all of a sudden. Yoojin thinks of how annoying it'll be, but he also believes that the person he called earlier is the best guy who can seal his image as someone weak and in need of protection. The lightning that just flashed makes quick work of the monster moles. With those monsters already fried, a voice speaks up, commenting on how his item's charms are too much for Taewon. Hyunjae's son appears before them, asking Taewon if he got that right. It looks like they're really tiring Taewon out. First, the monsters, then Yoojin, and now it's Hyunjae. Yoojin pales and groans as he looks at Hyunjae. He feels the overwhelming pressure from the S-ranker's power, wondering if it has always been that way. Yoojin really doesn't want to encounter Hyunjae when his fear resistance is so weak. However, Taewon must deem him as someone who must be protected. To do that, Hyunjae's presence is necessary in this equation. The Sishan Guildmaster will be able to make him look like someone who really needs protection, since he treats him like an item. Hyunjae smiles as he reminds Taewon that when he picks up a lost item, he should return it to the owner intact. He speaks more nonsense about compensation when he notices Yoojin's terrible state. Hyunjae calls out to Yoojin as the F-ranker trembles while covering himself on the ground. Seeing this, the Sishan Guildmaster asks what Taewon has done. Taewon ignores Hyunjae and tells Yoojin that this reaction to seeing an S-ranker is normal. Taewon then says to calm down. Really, Taewon? Have you forgotten that this is all your fault? Yoojin trembles, thinking he doesn't even need to make an effort to act as if he's scared. In his distressed state, Yoojin stutters an apology for being an F-ranker. He covers himself with his arms as he asks the Sishan Guildmaster to get away from him. Yoojin recalls how they acted together before. The Sishan Guildmaster stares at Yoojin's stateless small smile. As for Yoojin, he relies on the fact that Hyunjae is quick-witted. He is confident that the other will quickly catch on to what he wants from the other at that moment. With a smirk, Yoojin is sure that the other immediately understood. At that exact moment, Hyunjae takes out his chains while Yoojin thinks this is just a continuation of their act back in Hong Kong. Taewon is surprised when the chains directly aim at Yoojin. Not letting it pass, Taewon quickly grabs the chains, preventing it from getting to Yoojin. With the struggling chains in his hands, Taewon asks Hyunjae for the meaning of his actions. Unfazed, Hyunjae simply claims that he's there to take back what's his. Taewon reminds him of Yoojin's request for him to leave. With a smug look, Hyunjae denies his understanding, seeing that there's no reason for him to heed an item's pleas. Taewon angrily states that Yoojin Han is not an item, and he won't let Hyunjae do as he pleases to Yoojin. If you listen to Taewon's line without context, this sounds like a love triangle. Seeing Taewon's reaction, Yoojin is surprised that their plan is actually working. With Hyunjae acting as an S-rank monster about to take him away, Taewon has no choice but to try and save him. Though Yoojin almost feels terrible about this, it is still something that they must do, considering how stubborn Taewon is. Taewon suddenly crushes the chains in his hands as he announces his intention to resort to a different method if the Season Guildmaster doesn't give up. This reaction surprises Yoojin. However, Hyunjae is not the type to back down. With a smile, he agrees to Taewon's assessment since it's been some time since the two of them last tangled together. This response makes Yoojin more worried. Taewon gathers the dark energy of his insidious pillager skill in his fist as he tells Yoojin to stay back. Yoojin tries to stop them, thinking he doesn't want them to fight. Well, those are some unruly kids in your hands, MC. Taewon punches the ground and spreads his energy to where Hyunjae is. The ground crumbles and Hyunjae quickly leaps up, finding it touching that Taewon wants to protect a helpless, fragile F-ranker. Taewon suddenly appears from behind, lifting his feet to attack Hyunjae. He brings down his foot with significant impact, creating destruction with his sudden attack. Hyunjae groans as he gets thrown off, his clothes now dirty. The Seishin Guildmaster thinks about how Taewon has greater strength and speed compared to him, and he can't really do anything about that, even if he uses his skill, Battle Foresight. Taewon is once again leaping to where Hyunjae is. The other prepares by making his chains rise, letting electricity run through them. Facing the chains, Taewon uses his fist filled with his insidious pillager skill, rendering them ineffective. He then pulls his other fist to attack Hyunjae. However, Taewon's fist stops mid-air before the smiling Hyunjae. The electricity-filled chains are able to hold off Taewon's attacking arm, tying it up to a huge truck. Still smiling, Hyunjae reminds Taewon that he should also look out for the item since he aims to take it back. Hearing this, Taewon looks back with worry. Hyunjae's chain is almost at Yoojin. Taewon quickly acts, holding the chain with his free hand. Taewon's movement is expected and Hyunjae returns the previous favor with his own kick. His attack connects, smashing Taewon right in the face. With chains still wrapped in Taewon's arms connecting him to the truck, he is sent flying, crashing into the rubble and vehicles nearby. Taewon staggers to right himself while Hyunjae calmly watches him. Hyunjae reminds Taewon how hard it is to unleash his all when he must also protect someone. Smirking, he finds it a shame for Taewon, but Hyunjae still intends to take his item back now. It's really amazing how Hyunjae's acting proves that he and MC have this tacit understanding that doesn't require further communication. Suddenly, Taewon grabs the chains, holding him back with such grit. The truck he's tied to is lifted into the air at his pull of sheer determination and strength. This spectacular sight makes Hyunjae laugh. Using the chains to his advantage, Taewon directs the truck, crashing it toward Hyunjae. Still smiling, Hyunjae easily splits the huge vehicle with his chains, appearing in between. With the chains gone in his arms, Taewon is about to attack again, and Hyunjae faces the other head-on with his chains. The clash between the two creates greater destruction, making Yoojin cover and groan at the pressure it brings. He can only watch with one eye open, knowing that this isn't a case that can be resolved peacefully. However, the fight's intensity surpasses Yoojin's expectations, making it hard for him to keep up with what's happening. You're not alone in those thoughts, MC. Their fight's intensity is so high that I can only name some unidentifiable objects flying off as rubble. Yoojin ponders if that kind of fight is even typical. Even though the rank of his fear resistance decreased, it is still a C rank. A shadow suddenly appears, calling out to Yoojin. Noah appears above him, declaring that he has just finished dealing with the monsters. However, Yoojin views Noah as scarier than usual, making him scream fearfully. Hearing the sudden loud sound, Noah tears up at Yoojin's reaction. Yoojin is still reeling from fear at the sudden dragon ambush. Still, he manages to stutter an apology to the S-ranker. Noah asks if Yoojin is okay, seeing that he doesn't look fine. He suddenly exclaims at Yoojin's injury, intending to heal the other. However, Noah appears scary in Yoojin's POV, making him cry in fear. Undeterred, Noah still uses his healing hand skill on Yoojin, but he ends up surprised when the skill doesn't work. Yoojin tries to laugh it off, claiming that it's a unique injury. He then asks Noah to give him some space. With his heightened S-ranker stats, Hyunjae hears the exchange between the two and asks how unique Yoojin's injury is. Still looking back at them, Hyunjae comments on how there seems to be a problem with his item. He tells Taewon that they should end it there for now. Taewon is confused by Hyunjae's words. The Seishin Guildmaster simply announces that he must cut his item open to find out what he's hiding. At that, electricity-filled chains shoot up from the ground, surprising Taewon. The chains rise high in the air as Hyunjae calmly stands at the center of the destroyed ground, once again claiming his intention to take Yoojin with him. Oh, he called Yoojin by his name this time. The act is up, and Hyunjae is serious this time. Bright light flashes as Hyunjae zaps lightning at where Taewon is, further destroying their surrounding. However, Taewon quickly jumps to evade in time. He leaps to where Hyunjae is, announcing that he'll not let Hyunjae do as he pleases. Taewon is about to hit Hyunjae's smiling face with his fist when something suddenly stops him from doing so. Red drips to the ground as Taewon looks at his chest, shocked at what just happened. He looks a bit like a hedgehog here. While Taewon coughs in pain, Hyunjae stares down at him and says that he used electromagnetism. He explains how he used the chain's electric charge to attract the metals that are now stuck in Taewon. Hyunjae claims that he's achieved his goal as Taewon glares up at him. With a smile, Hyunjae looks down at Taewon, admitting that it was fun. Seeing the state of the fight, Yoojin mutters about electromagnetism. Noah is shocked, claiming that he's never seen that before. Yoojin comments on how OP it is, admitting that he didn't expect Hyunjae to have that much ability. Still coughing, Taewon says that he won't let Hyunjae take Yoojin. Smiling, Hyunjae speaks to Yoojin, claiming he already achieved his goal. Hyunjae then asks what he will do now. Yoojin knows that Hyunjae is correct, but he still feels that he can't leave things as is. Standing, Yoojin instructs Noah to heal Taewon. Noah was surprised by this, since it is the other who has just attacked him. Yoojin claims it's a bit complicated. He looks at Taewon, thinking the S-ranker is indeed a complicated guy. You were drinking and enjoying your time together earlier, but now this happened. Not moving from where he is crouching, Taewon tells Yoojin that he can't go with the seasoned guild master since he's dangerous. Yoojin looks at Taewon as he approaches the S-ranker. He then bluntly tells the other that he called Hyunjae there despite knowing the danger. Yoojin announces that it is because he is more scared of Taewon trying to attack him. This revelation shocks Taewon, who is now speechless. Yoojin continues, telling Taewon that there's something that he should do, and it's not something that he'll give up on even if Taewon intimidates him. Yoojin says it will only get more dangerous for him if Taewon tries to stop him, just like what happened today. He tells the other that it is impossible for him to return to the ordinary daily life that Taewon wants for him. Stunned, Taewon can only look at Yoojin as the other tells him without hesitation that he won't be convinced by Taewon's method. Yoojin then asks what differentiates Taewon from the other monsters when Taewon himself threatens him just to make him stop. Yoojin's words made Taewon recall his past, where he was called a monster. An ashtray was thrown and a large man cursed and accused Taewon while crying. At that funeral, other men held the large man back, stopping him from creating further injury. Remembering his past, Taewon knows that even if he tells himself not to possess such power, or even if he denies that monsters with such abilities shouldn't wreak havoc, Taewon knows full well that he's no different. He looks up in the sky, finally understanding that the way he is now won't be convincing. Wait, is that all needed for Taewon's past? Hyunjae looks down at Taewon, thinking that even if the other pretends to be a sheepdog mixed with the sheep, it is undeniable that the other will still be a wolf. Taewon looks down again. The S-ranker is not cold enough not to use his abilities when he sees someone in danger. Throwing his power won't change the fact that he can't return to the old, ordinary life that he desires. Rather, there's nothing for Taewon to return to. Noah finally approaches Taewon, asking the other to show him his injuries. Though surprised, Taewon does as he is told and Noah starts healing him. Watching himself get healed, he suddenly speaks up, asking Yoojin if he's not going to contact and hang out with him anymore. This question surprises both Noah and Yoojin. What? Now it feels like he's a clingy boyfriend who just realized how much he messed up. Yoojin wonders if it is really the time and place for such a question. Taewon made that mess, yet what he's most concerned about now is whether they can still have fried chicken and beer together. Yoojin ponders if talking behind Hyunjae's back is really important for Taewon. If that's the case, even I get the appeal of hanging out together. Seeing Yoojin still unable to respond, Noah tells Taewon that they should remove the metal pieces. Taewon says he'll do it and simply removes them without hesitation. The scene makes Yoojin pale and shriek in shock. He stops them and asks if Taewon will continue without painkillers. Taewon and Noah blankly look at Yoojin's reaction. Taewon then claims that this amount is not much for an S-ranker. Yoojin wants to retort, but Taewon assures him that this kind of thing happens often in his line of work, so Yoojin doesn't need to worry. Yoojin is stunned by this, finally understanding things as he watches Taewon be healed by Noah. Though Taewon can be obstinate about maintaining the status quo, Yoojin knows that the other's line of work is already extraordinary. Yoojin thinks that the only ordinary life that Taewon can experience now is the time they spent chatting and hanging out together. He ponders if this is why the other always responds to his messages despite being wary of him. Scratching his head, Yoojin feels he can't simply cut off the other if that's the case. You really can be soft-hearted, MC. This is why Lil Bro is always worried about you. Yoojin suddenly gives Taewon a hand, claiming that he'll keep in contact with him. He adds that he'll keep doing what Taewon doesn't want him to do. Yoojin believes that he and Taewon are the same when it comes to yearning for their mundane lives. With a smile, Yoojin declares that he can be considered an ordinary civilian and wants Taewon to continue his tolerance of him. Yoojin thinks of giving Taewon a piece of that ordinary life, wanting the other to take his hand regarding this matter. Taewon thoughtfully looks up at Yoojin and reaches out to take the outstretched hand before him. The S-ranker then claims that Yoojin has a knack for making things difficult for him. With that resolved, Yoojin thinks that Taewon will try attacking him randomly. However, things are not entirely settled yet. A gloved hand suddenly touches Yoojin on the shoulder. With a sparkling, bright smile, Hyunjae announces that he and Yoojin must talk. Hyunjae's actions make Yoojin sweat with a new worry, thinking he must take care of this matter now. Hyunjae is about to compliment Yoojin on his performance but suddenly stops when he sees that the other is actually trembling. Seeing this, he starts asking if it is actually not an act. Yoojin suddenly stammers his thanks to Hyunjae and suggests that they head to their respective homes to rest and meet up at a later date. At that, he quickly evades Hyunjae as much as his F-rank body can. Yoojin believes that he must stall until his fear resistance recovers its rank. Not to be deterred, Hyunjae suggests giving Yoojin a ride home and talking on the way in his car instead. Yoojin laughs it off, claiming he'll get a taxi with his phone. He checks it, finding the device dead because it was zapped by lightning. With a pale, smiling face, Yoojin curses at his predicament. "I don't think you'll be able to get out of this one, MC." Panicked, he runs off at the sight of a convenience store, claiming that there's bound to be a phone he can use there. Without a word, Hyunjae watches Yoojin zoom away. The door to the convenience store once again opens. Leather shoes step in at the messy store. The owner of the shoes scolds Yoojin for being a bit harsh and turning him down. Smiling, Hyunjae voices his thoughts on how Yoojin lacks his usual bravado. Yoojin freezes at Hyunjae's arrival. This looks like a horror scene where the victim is trying to call for help to escape from his psycho killer, but instead, he gets found out. Yoojin looks back at Hyunjae with a smile, though his sweat is noticeable. He nervously comments on Hyunjae's assessment, claiming that he's been feeling off and adding that he had been busy. Hyunjae simply asks if something happened with Taewon. He ponders out loud if Yoojin's boldness stems from a skill, and that skill somehow got nullified by Taewon. Yoojin pales more at how accurate Hyunjae's assessment is. He then backs away, denying his understanding of what Hyunjae just said. Yoojin even claims that he and Taewon just had a discussion about life. "Well, MC, you're already getting your karma for making fun of Hyunjae behind his back." Hyunjae approaches Yoojin, asking about the fire from earlier. He knows that there is only one person capable of leaving such burn marks on Taewon. Hyunjae doesn't say who, and Yoojin quickly interjects, claiming that there was an explosion nearby. Yoojin profusely sweats in discomfort, knowing he won't answer Hyunjae's questions, especially if they are about his and his brother's skills. He tries to come up with a plan when Hyunjae suddenly asks to cut open the scar on Yoojin's chest. The change in the subject makes Yoojin panic more, shouting and calling Hyunjae a psycho. With such a negative response, Hyunjae touches Yoojin and grabs the other's torn clothes. Hyunjae's smile shows how much he is holding back as he announces his confidence in controlling the cut from overflowing. However, if Yoojin won't let him do that, then the other should at least explain. Yoojin pales and trembles before Hyunjae. The Sishin Guildmaster has a scary smile as he shares that he has a feeling that Yoojin will willingly answer all of his questions this time. "Oh no, I think MC is done for." Hyunjae stares down at Yoojin and asks again about Yoojin's chest injury. Though scared and sweaty, Yoojin glares up at Hyunjae in return. He knows that the Sishin Guildmaster is taking advantage of this moment to learn everything about him, waiting for Yoojin to let his guard down. Yoojin ponders on his secrets that involve his skills, a mana stone within him, his relationship with the Transcendence, and possibly even the fact that he turned back time. He knows that if Hyunjae learns all of this, he will have a different view of him. Yoojin is aware that he might be considered a threat that must be eliminated. Knowing the gravity of the situation, he decides to change the topic instead. Yoojin's foot fidgets on the ground and suddenly announces that he slipped while cutting green onions. Hyunjae stares at Yoojin and humors him by asking if he cut himself so deep that Noah's healing skill can't even heal it. Yoojin looks away, claiming that the green onion was actually an S rank. That's honestly funny. But MC, can't you think up something more plausible? Yoojin mulls how Hyunjae is at least better than Taewon. He believes that he should just hold out and keep avoiding the questions. However, Yoojin is still pale. He looks down and urges Hyunjae to go back since he's busy. Yoojin tries to set a later date for them to catch up, but Hyunjae merely grins, believing that he's left with no choice. Yoojin's body suddenly receives a great shock, making him confused. He drops to the floor and grunts several times as his body is filled with dread. Finding it hard to breathe, Yoojin chokes in disbelief as several system notifications appear, indicating the overwhelming threat before him. Humanage touches Yoojin's head, calling him. He then holds Yoojin's chin up, making the shivering F-ranker look up at him. With a deadly look, Hyunjae urges Yoojin to be honest with him. Yoojin can only look up in dismay, knowing that he can't really resist the other at that moment. Grinning, Hyunjae asks Yoojin again about his chest injury. Gasping for breath, Yoojin finally admits that it is because of a mana stone. He continues to groan in pain as Hyunjae gently asks for Yoojin's obedience so that he'll feel better. Yoojin tries to control his impulses as his hand cracks on the floor. He musters all his courage and mentality, thinking that even with their massive gap in rank, this pressure is nothing compared to the terrors that he has already gone through. Yoojin pushes himself to think about genuine fear. At the thought, he identifies true fear as the disappearance of his brother. Oh no, this is just heart-wrenching. Lil Bro is the #1 in Big Bro's heart. Hyunjae notices the sudden change in Yoojin, seeing that the other finally stops hyperventilating. Yoojin knows well that he can't escape the pressure of being an F rank. With his fear resistance currently at C rank, he is aware of the impossibility of overcoming the power gap with sheer willpower. However, even if he is an F rank, Yoojin persists. Yoojin suddenly brings his hand to the ground, emitting a great energy that bursts around them. Yoojin's actions make Hyunjae a bit taken aback. Around them, the surrounding is filled with red and black. Yoojin recalls what Iron told him about still having Dharma's psychological skill. At this point, Yoojin's head is filled with thoughts of past experiences, and their surroundings change with a rumble. Hyunjae looks around in confusion while Yoojin still remains crouching. Yoojin believes that to break through the pressure from an S-ranker, he must get someone who's much scarier. Yoojin glares, and with those thoughts, he begins summoning the likeness of the Mermaid Queen and Diarma despite his lack of proficiency. He revived his haunting memories by bringing them forth, similar to what the lizard owner did before. In case you forgot, MC saw Mermaid Queen and Diarma's actual forms back in Chapter 92. These two horrifying presences are what Yoojin has encountered before. The overwhelming power and pressure from those two are incomparable to Hyunjae. With the image of those two looming over him, Yoojin glares up at Hyunjae, cursing him in his head as he unleashes the last of the ability. Hyunjae watches Yoojin as the F-ranker glares up at him with such great intensity. Suddenly, Yoojin drops face down to the ground with a grunt as if losing fuel. Hyunjae looks around, confused as to what just happened. Before him, Yoojin coughs and pulls himself up. Suddenly, Yoojin drops face down to the ground with a grunt as if losing fuel. Hyunjae looks around, confused as to what just happened. Before him, Yoojin coughs and pulls himself up. Hyunjae looks down at Yoojin with interest, thinking of the tremendous mana wave that just crashed on him. He can't help wondering what Yoojin did this time. Wait, he just felt it. That means everything that happened was in MC's POV. Yoojin heaves as tears pour out from his eyes. He then looks up at Hyunjae, asking what he's looking at. Yoojin then proudly announces to Hyunjae that he's just a mere S-ranker. The proclamation stuns Hyunjae quiet. The corner of his lips suddenly rises as he covers them, thinking of how interesting Yoojin truly is. Thinking that he'll never really get bored of Yoojin, Hyunjae picks Yoojin up from the ground as the other glares at him despite his sweaty figure. The Sishun Guild Master then apologizes to Yoojin. Though his head is still filled with his desire to dissect Yoojin, Hyunjae decides against this and reasons that keeping the other alive is infinitely more entertaining. Carrying Yoojin with one arm, Hyunjae goes out of the convenience store and announces that he'll waive one of the two remaining favors that Yoojin owes him in exchange for Noah. Despite his situation, Yoojin cheekily tells the other to get rid of both. Hyunjae replies, humorously questioning Yoojin for being harsh to a mere S-ranker. He then adds about providing chauffeur service by dropping Yoojin off at home for free. Ha, he's being petty. Also, these two really love RP. With a grin, Hyunjae talks about parking his car nearby. However, the said car is now crushed, making it impossible to use. Seeing this, Hyunjae recalls how Taewon got thrown off, destroying the nearby vehicles. He then claims that Taewon smashed it. Going to where the others are, the workers are finally taking care of the destruction as Noah continues to heal Taewon. The S-rank civil servant suddenly asks Noah if his healing skill also affects the mind. The dragon is surprised by the question, but he honestly answers Taewon's question with a no and asks him why. Taewon's face is suddenly filled with bliss, feeling as if he finally settled an old grudge. Well, you just did, Taewon. Returning to Hyunjae and our MC, Hyunjae is still smiling, although he is obviously unhappy as he announces that he'll call for a new car. In his arm, Yoojin laughs out loud since Taewon finally got his revenge despite losing the battle. That's karma biting back at Hyunjae. Also, MC really looks happy in that panel. The dungeon break is finally taken care of with Yoojin's aid as an unintentional bait. The monsters are dealt with, ensuring the civilians' safety. On the car ride heading back to Yoojin's place, Yoojin claims that they shouldn't let things end there just because there's little damage. He expresses his desire to expose the association for their actions. Even though he is tired, Yoojin continues to discuss how it will be troublesome to find the people involved in the unregistered dungeon. Considering the monster bees, he speaks of his thoughts on checking the supply network of dungeon-produced honey in the market. Hyunjae finally looks at Yoojin with a smile and says he'll look into this matter. He promises to prepare it for Yoojin and tells the other to contact him later after he's rested. At that, Yoojin finally returns home. Upon entering his place, Yoojin plops down to the ground completely exhausted and announces that he's back. Chirpy peeps as the white bird walks toward Yoojin. Seeing the bird, Yoojin smiles at it, touched by how the other was waiting for him. He then apologizes for getting home late, saying a lot happened. Yoojin then mutters his relief that his chest injury wasn't opened up and soon dozes off on the floor with Chirpy by his side. A shadow appears, asking about the chest injury that Yoojin just muttered. Yoojin looks down at his older brother's sleeping form and chest injury, wondering what he did this time. I just hope little bro doesn't go overprotective again. It is now raining. A voice from the phone assures that there's nothing to worry about since the matter with Taewon has already been taken care of. Yoojin is on the phone as he checks on his older brother, who is resting. He then asks about his brother's chest injury, saying that even a top-tier potion doesn't work on it. The voice from the other end is surprised that even Yoojin doesn't know about it. Hyunjae is at his home and shares that even No's healing skill doesn't work on it. He adds that Yoojin doesn't want to explain it as well. Hyunjae admits that all he knows about it is that it involves mana stones. He then instructs Yoojin to focus on the chest injury and he'll understand. Yoojin does as he is told and proves that Hyunjae speaks the truth. Hyunjae continues, saying that their ability to detect it means the mana stone must be S-grade or higher. Yoojin recalls what happened before with the monsters aiming at his older brother. He then remembers hearing about monsters detecting the presence of mana stones. He even mulls at the existence of a top-tier mana stone on an F ranker, making him a complete prey. While thinking of this, Hyunjae speaks up from the phone, asking Yoojin to send one of his S-rank green onions. The Sishin Guild Master humorously brings up the possibility that Yoojin actually got hurt from cutting green onions. The phone in Hyunjae's hand suddenly beeps, recognizing how the Heian Guild Master just hung up on him. Old man Hyunjae, the jokes between you and our MC don't work on lil bro. With the phone in his hand, Hyunjae wonders out loud what Yoojin is planning this time. He finds life more amusing by having Yoojin around. Hyunjae thinks of the electromagnetic force he tried and suddenly stops short. He looks at his hand, wondering if he had always been proficient in handling magnetic forces. Hyunjae barely started learning it, but the impact of this ability went beyond what a beginner can do. He can't help thinking that it is like he has been learning it for years already. Hyunjae feels like it has been 5 years. Oh, he's really sensitive. Returning to Yoojin, our MC feels like he's submerging in water in a snowing place. There is endless snow and similarly endless white branches. He recognizes the place as the Tree of Snowfall. The place is the 5th origin where the white bird, also known as the bird that counts stars, lives. White feathers are floating around when Yoojin looks back and finds Chirpy floating in space using the gift it got from Youngwoo. What the? Please don't tell me that the bird that counts stars is Chirpy. Chirpy happily peeps as Yoojin looks at the ball of white with apparent surprise. Yoojin thinks that he's in a dream, but seeing Chirpy and it being white makes him ponder about it. Still believing he's in a dream, he hopes to see him this time. Yoojin follows Chirpy, who gently drops on a white-coated land. Chirpy walks on the snow one step at a time. As it continues to walk further, it finally reaches a body lying on the ground. Yoojin's eyes droop at the sight. The body is none other than his dead 25-year-old brother that the white bird took. The color of the black lashes is more prominent as they rest on Yoojin's pale skin. Seeing his beloved brother, Yoojin is stunned. He knows that this Yoojin won't wake up and that he doesn't feel cold since he's dead. However, Yoojin still believes it to be a dream. He tries to get closer, but a sudden gust of wind stops him from getting to Yoojin and Chirpy. Yoojin stretches out his arm, hoping to get closer and desiring to hug his brother in that dream. The endless snow continues to fall. Chirpy is just beside Yoojin, and Yoojin can only look at his dead brother from afar, which is similar to what he'd always done in his past reality. Unable to get closer, Yoojin thinks he's not asking too much. Please at least let big bro get close to hug his little bro. This kind of longing is making our hearts ache. A voice calls out to Yoojin, telling him to wake up. Yoojin finds Yoojin before him with iron stuck on his cheek. Yoojin sees his older brother wake up and tells him he should eat. Still out of it, Yoojin suddenly grabs Yoojin in surprise, asking how he got there. Though shocked by his big bro's actions, Yoojin claims that he used a gate stone to get out of the dungeon. With his party's consent, Yoojin excused himself early from the raid since he deemed that it would be fine even without him. Yoojin continues to hold Yoojin by the shoulders, realizing that it is not his dead brother. The one before him is his 20-year-old brother. Yoojin gently lets go as he stares at his brother. A bit taken aback, Yoojin calls him. Yoojin cradles his head, softly saying that it is indeed him. Worried, Yoojin asks what's wrong, observing that his big bro looks terrible. Still holding his head, Yoojin claims that he had a nightmare. He then goes off using what happened with his fear resistance skill as his excuse. Yoojin explains how he shared his skill that doubles the effect and power of an attack skill with Taewon and how the other used it to lower his fear resistance skill. Lamenting, Yoojin announces that it'll last for a few days. Yoojin is so stunned by this news that iron suddenly pops out of his cheek. Lil Bro exclaims at how Big Bro used that skill again. Yoojin rubs his neck and reasons that he didn't expect such an outcome. He suddenly stops talking, noticing something else in the bed. Soft peeping sounds come from Chirpy as it weakly gets Yoojin's attention. Yoojin shouts in surprise and quickly takes the bird. He asks if Chirpy is hungry, feeding him some mana stones. He notices how wet the bird is, asks if it went out when it was raining, and demands to learn where it went. While it is raining in the current scene, it is also possible that what Big Bro saw is not entirely a dream. Yoojin watches his older brother feed Chirpy, but then he suddenly becomes melancholy. He speaks of how the C-Zone Guildmaster mentioned Yoojin being in a weird state. Wanting to learn the truth, Yoojin directly asks Yoojin about his chest injury and mentions how it's related to mana stones. Yoojin is surprised that Yoojin already knows about it and stutters a reply. Yoojin stops to stare at his younger brother when Yoojin starts talking about Yoojin getting into dangerous situations without even hearing about it from him. Yoojin looks away in distress as he says this. Seeing his brother like this, Yoojin realizes that he's making Yoojin worry again. Recalling his past, Yoojin before Yoojin's regression was also worried all the time, and now he's doing it again. Realizing his mistake, Yoojin smiles and rubs his brother's head as he apologizes. He brings up his promise to tell Yoojin everything. Yoojin then starts explaining things to Yoojin. Finally, please resolve things with peaceful communication. After some time, Yoojin shouts upon learning that his brother shoves some mana stones into his own body. In bed, Chirpy happily sleeps after eating its fill. Aaron watches the bird sleep while Yoojin questions his big bro's decision to put mana stones from an SS-ranked Dragonkin and Diarma into his body. Yoojin wears a new shirt as he assures his lil bro that he's okay. He adds that these are extremely rare ingredients after all. Yoojin explains that if is safely born, then it'll be at least an S rank. Considering this, Yoojin believes he's not losing out since he'll gain another obedient, powerful monster. Touching the scar on his chest, Yoojin thinks of the words that are left best unsaid. He himself is a bit anxious, seeing that nothing substantial has happened since he placed these mana stones inside him. Yoojin wonders if it is simply taking some time since it is of high rank. Dismissing the depressing thoughts, Yoojin finishes changing his shirt and smiles at Yoojin. He claims that this is all for the sake of his safety. However, Yoojin is unsatisfied and reminds his big bro that monsters are attracted to him because of those mana stones. Lil bro is definitely right in this regard. Not letting the matter completely close, Yoojin suggests having Yoojin stay home since it's safer. Yoojin understands his brother's concern but still reasons that there are numerous things for him to attend to that he can't simply lounge at home. To give his brother an idea, Yoojin suggests watching the news. He opens the television and the news of the dungeon break is now airing. The news reporter relays the information about the dungeon break in the Gangseo View area. Seeing the news, Yoojin comments on the lack of information about yesterday's dungeon break and adds that they are evidently trying to bury a Hong Kong incident. He announces his intention to make them pay for these. Yoojin tells his brother that it will be over for the KHA once they reveal that they're behind this dungeon break. He then mentions meeting Hyunjae to get some related files. Yoojin is surprised that Yoojin is leaving again and says it's dangerous, considering his fear resistance is low. Yoojin reminds his brother that an average person doesn't have fear resistance. Yoojin holds Yoojin on the shoulder, saying that the person his brother is about to meet is not an average person. Yoojin suddenly releases immense mana, reminding his older brother about what high-rank hunters are like. He claims that letting loose a bit in his brother's current state will affect him. Yoojin looks at his brother and suddenly flicks him in the forehead. He tells Yoojin that he's an exception and that he won't be scared. Yoojin rubs his forehead as Yoojin says that he's fine and he won't be scared since Yoojin is his younger brother after all. Even before Yoojin turned back time, there was never a moment when he felt intimidated or scared of his brother. He ponders whether this is because he raised Yoojin. Recalling Yoojin's last moments is the scariest for Yoojin. At present, Yoojin feels adorably happy at his brother's words. Considering this talk settled, Yoojin asks Yoojin to lend him a phone. Really, these brothers are too precious. I want to hold them and keep them safe from this bloody plot. When Yoojin turned back time, his initial plan was to live a peaceful life. However, this changed when he realized that some things must be done, no matter how dangerous. These tasks involve stopping the end of their world, preventing his brother's death, and recovering the remains of his 25-year-old brother. Yoojin knows that he still must do a lot of things. With such thought, Yoojin is now calling Hyunjae, but he's surprised that the other isn't answering. In Hyunjae's place, Hyunjae's phone screen is broken and his item is calling. The place is filled with charged electricity, and some house items are damaged. Hyunjae is crouched on the ground as his power continues to run rampant in his place. Looking at the broken glass on the ground, Hyunjae questions the existence of such memories. He knows that he never experienced them, but it is like he has forgotten them. In his memories, there is a different-looking Hyunjae, Yoojin, and Taewon. Hyunjae holds his head in surprise, thinking that what he's seeing is the future and wondering if these are memories from 5 years into the future. Oh, if he manages to recover all those memories, does that mean he'll help our MC deal with the end of their world?